Coming off the high of last week's action-packed episode, we are down to just 3 more. I was expecting longer runtime since episodes 4 and 5 were very short, and let's be honest, 1 episode. I was also expecting that after the show kicked into such a high gear, we'd be on an out-of-control ride to the end. I knew it wasn't going to be as action-packed as that, but I did expect some solid story movement, and that is not what we got. So let's get into the bit there is to get into. Osha wakes up in Qimir's cave, which is a callback to when we first met her. Her side is bandaged, so I guess I was wrong last week when I thought that he used force healing on her side. She goes out and the rocks are all covered in green. It's a remote island on an ocean. I thought maybe we were back on Ahch-To. It is a force nexus, but it's labeled as unknown planet. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not Ahch-To, but probably not. Osha watches Qimir strip down and go for a swim. He knows she's there the entire time. Everything he does is a manipulation. He's showing ultimate vulnerability and even goes so far as to let her get his hands on his lightsaber. Everything Osha throws at him, he has a counter for, in a very calm and logical sounding way. Qimir says he was a Jedi a really long time ago when Osha says she doesn't recognize him. And I think this means unnaturally long life, especially if my theory on his Jedi master pans out. My theory on his Sith master is one of the big names that we know in the Sith lineage. Tenebrous, or maybe even Plagueis, but my money would be on Tenebrous if we're going that way. He's manipulating Osha into being his pupil. Osha's stuck in a Jedi way of thinking. He says the thinking of using emotions to access the Force as nothing but a path to the dark side is semantics. I get Osha rejects the dark side after half of her life spent with the Jedi Order, but before that, she was part of a coven of witches. She used magic. She touched the Force through non-Jedi means, and she knows it. Qimir's words carry more weight because of her past. Every point of view Osha has, Qimir has a reasonable counter to it. I think at this point in Osha's position, I'd be signing up with Qimir. At least he seems honest, unlike the Jedi that we've met so far. I still think Qimir is after a pupil to take out his Sith master, but now I also think he's after one to get revenge on both of his masters, Sith and Jedi. Osha says she left the Jedi Order because she failed. That's all we get. We don't know into what capacity or to what degree. She asks Qimir what he wants, and he says the power of 2. Of course, we knew he was after a pupil, that's obvious, but this exact phrasing says there's a connection to the witches. I love that they say cortosis in the actual show. That's the metal that his helmet and bracer are made out of. I flipped for it last week as it was shutting off the lightsabers and he was using it as a weapon. I was blown away after I did some research because this is a thing that I had read about in legends, but also in some canon stories. The helmet wasn't just an intimidating mask and a bit of armor. It's a sensory deprivation apparatus. It blocks Qimir's other senses so he can go deeper into the Force. Osha's tempted by this and puts the helmet on before the episode prematurely rolls the credits. This says a lot for Osha's future, along with Qimir telling her that it's her power Soul uses to find her and not his, and also the fact that she's wearing the helmet so she can get deeper into the Force. I think the floodgates are going to open for her. This is going to be how she gets the full backstory on her past and lets her access her emotions to go after the Jedi and do exactly what Qimir's manipulating her to do. If nothing else, this episode cements that Qimir is the best character on the show. Soul flees Kofar, leaving all the fallen Jedi laying around. He sends a distress call to Vernestra, but it's scrambled. This would have been a lot better with May sabotaging the communications in some way instead of just convenience playing a part. May's wandering the ship. It's clear Basil knows something's off about her, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I don't care about Basil, and his whole story arc with getting Pip going and everything amounts to nothing. Not only that, but Basil actually ruins one of the best moments from this storyline in the episode. Lee Jung-Jae's Soul is giving a great performance. He is outstanding. There's a scene of him alone. The losses and cover-ups are eating away at him. He loses himself in anger. He's barely holding it together. He gives us every emotion, everything Soul's feeling without saying a word, and then Basil takes the tone in a 180 and acts goofy. It completely killed the momentum. Soul starts to confess to who he thinks is Osha. Almost giving information is basically the theme of this episode. He's ready to face his past and the Jedi High Council. I have a hard time with Soul having no inkling who May really is. They do have a conversation about seeing or sensing what you want rather than what's right in front of you. That works for me if we ignore the fact that Soul is a Jedi Master, one who's said to be powerful with a particular connection to Osha and actually May through the past events. He eventually catches up and subdues May. He says he has 16 years of guilt to get off his chest and she needs to listen, but It cuts away. I'm sure we're gonna get it next week in a flashback, but give us something, come on. Vernestra has a limited amount of screen time. She's playing politics when she gets the distress call from Sol. The wider story of politics moving their way into the Jedi Order makes sense in the grand scheme of things, given where the Jedi Order and politics being intermingled ends up in the prequel era. The Acolyte either needed to commit to developing this further or just drop it. With how short a lot of these episodes are, there would have been plenty of time for them to flesh this out without spending a ton of money on it. It's just talking. It could have added real weight to Vernestra rather than a nod to the audience who knows what's coming. She says it's her responsibility to fix the problem on Kofar since she's the one who sent the group there. While that is true, I think there's more. She knows something's up, and I think she has a good idea of what that something is. She brings a small group with her to Kofar. They find the fallen Jedi, and they know they were all killed by a lightsaber. One of the Padawans with her asks if it was Sol. That does make some sense to an outsider. He was the lone survivor and is powerful in the Force. They were all killed by a lightsaber. Vernestra snaps back saying that that's a big allegation. Again, more behind her words. This is either gonna pan out or make me look like I'm in my basement using red string to make these connections. Sol and the Jedi from Brendok are covering something big up. We know that that's the thrust of the season. It's something that we'll probably learn next week fully. Vernestra has her own cover-up going. She was Qimar's Jedi Master. Mirialans don't typically live over 100 years like Vernestra is, but Vernestra can because of her connection to the Force. Qimir was a Jedi a long time ago. He learned how to slow the aging process using the Force from his Jedi Master, Vernestra. He knows a lot about the Order. He knows their doctrine. He was part of it. The scar on his back isn't typical to what we've seen from lightsaber wounds. It's not a straight cut, and it's healed differently. It's from Vernestra's light whip. She breaks out her light whip to cut a bug in half. That reveal would be completely wasted if it was just about cutting the bug in half. It has to be connected to something bigger. This is a new lightsaber type for fans who don't read the books or comics or watch my videos. Throwing something like that in brand new to most audience members has to mean that there's a bigger connection, and the fact that they introduce it when they really focus on Qimar's wound makes sense to me. My theory is that Qimar's Jedi Master was Vernestra. When they parted ways, things got violent. Tenebrous, which makes more sense to me than Plagueis, found the young, confused Qimir, or whatever his name was at the time, and manipulated him much in the same ways that he is now manipulating Osha. He wants Osha to go after both of them with him. I found a lot of this episode frustrating. Half of the very limited runtime was treading water or out of the place comic relief. I understand the show is a mystery. I understand there's more episodes, but just to tease it that many times back to back to back, give us something. Okay, I'm being a bit harsh. I didn't hate it. Qimir was tremendous. Every time he was on the screen, I was locked in, and I got to expand my theory on his lineage. However, when Qimir wasn't on the screen, I don't think much happened. 8-episode seasons are already short. When we're approaching the end of a mystery series, we need more than 32 minutes of content, especially when half of them don't do anything to move the story forward. Looking back at the series so far, I find the pacing very unbalanced. I hope the story sticks the landing and all the pieces click into place. If the reveal of the end is unsatisfying, it could put a black mark over the whole show for me. This is a strange one. I've never experienced a Star Wars story, these black and white morality tales, where I actually wanted the bad guy to win. Check out this video next for more lore from the wider Star Wars galaxy.